people like to buy, but they don't like to be sold. And when you like feel like you just got hit with an upsell or something like that, and you see it, it kind of turns customers off. So you really want to make sure that the experience is like in line. It feels like you're doing them a favor instead of like trying to sell them something. And it's a really fine line that you have to dance in. And that's where I think working with a team that kind of knows what they're doing might help you out there to really build out some of those upsell and cross-sell experiences that are a little more fluid and built into the experience.
You're listening to the Traffic Handler Podcast. We're about getting new customers, making more sales, and growing your e-commerce retail business. I'm your host, Amy Biddle. Today's guest is Chase Clymer of Electric Eye and the Honest Ecommerce Podcast. Chase and the team at Electric Eye have a really good angle on conversion optimization for Shopify stores. So if you're on Shopify, you need to hear this episode. Highlight in the conversation is where Chase was talking about his brand scaling framework. Listen up during this part of our talk. You'll learn 3 metrics to watch for if you want to control growth in a simple but meaningful way. Enjoy the interview. Let's jump into ecom. Stuff's gotten hard over the past couple of years. It's really gotten goofy. I mean, like at a top level look, and we'll dive into details as we're going, but like, how are you dealing with all the changes for your clients and for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously with the pandemic, there was a big spike in the adoption of e-commerce. So there's a lot of new players in the space, a lot of legacy brands getting into the space, and that competition led to increases in obviously acquisition costs through the more traditional paid channels, things like that. And then you have iOS 14 coming out and slaughtering attribution. So people don't even know if their money's doing what it could do for them. So there's a lot of crazy stuff going on in e-commerce, but what we are kind of doing and how we are helping over at the agency is we are really focused on optimization for stores. So all of our time is spent increasing stores performance because that directly correlates to your conversion rate. We do proper CRO kind of testing. We do, site maps, heat maps, all that fun stuff through Hotjar. The whole goal is like, we're just trying to increase your average order value, increase your conversion rate. All of that directly correlates to a higher return on ad spend for all of our clients. And everybody's happy. So a lot of real fun stuff in the design dev stuff on Shopify stores is kind of what we're doing day in and day out.
And you said 2 of my favorite things just now, that you work on average order value. And I saw one of your articles or someplace, I was stalking you all over the place before we met, that, it's not ROAS, it's AOVs. Focus on what you have control over. And, I love the CRO stuff. So
yeah, I mean, it's honestly the number one way to increase your return on ad spend is to make your website better, because you could hire the best advertising team in the world, the best creative team in the world. You send them to a bad website, someone's not going to convert. So it really does come down to the experience. You got to make it easy. It's going to be seamless. It's got to feel, like kind of like how people know how to buy online. Don't try to change the thing. Like just kind of follow the patterns of the internet and make it an easy experience for your customers and let them buy what they want to buy, and don't throw any kind of weird stuff in their way.
Yeah, that's the way. And so the other part to that you're talking about is that if Facebook or the ad platforms, but specifically Facebook, if they don't like the site, they're going to jack up your ad costs. They're going to throttle your traffic. And, it's not even a matter of confusing your visitors. You'll have fewer visitors and you'll pay more for them.
Yeah. So that's unfortunate as well. And that's it with ad costs. I mean, the days are gone of people getting 10x on Facebook. I've talked to a lot of mature merchants, and, they're happy about like a 3x on whatever platform they're talking about. And that's kind of the reality that you're playing with, because you've got all these older brands with bigger pockets getting in there, spending the money that they need to spend to hit the numbers that they need to hit. So if you're coming in there as a younger brand and you've got a lesser budget, you need to make sure that you are putting your best foot forward. And that's like with the best website you can present, the best experience for your customers that you can present. Because if like you said, if it's a bad website, you're going to be paying more for that traffic. You're going to get throttled on that traffic.
Yeah, absolutely. So are there things that you suggest people do who maybe they can't afford Electric Eye yet, but they want to do some things. They're on Shopify, maybe debut or just a really simple theme. What do you tell people? How do you get them so that they can work with you?
Absolutely. So if you are doing less than, say, $10,000 in sales a month, you know what I mean? You're definitely a more scrappy entrepreneur. Focus specifically and only on sales. Ignore your website. Ignore everything I just said about conversion rate and average order value. Your job at that point is to find product market fit, to find customers. Your whole entire focus should be finding sales wherever they be. Try to find a predictable, repeatable way to acquire customers and get purchases. That's your entire job until you're kind of consistently doing around 10K a month, in my opinion.
Yes.
After that, you can slowly start to shift into kind of the experience a little bit. I mean, you can go a long way with kind of off the shelf themes. I would say that like an off the shelf theme is perfect for any brand doing under $1 million a year. It will probably solve the needs that you need. Because honestly, the edge that you're going to get from a custom solution, it isn't there yet with that amount of traffic. So you can kind of get away with using something that's kind of not as tailored to the experience, that the specific exact experience you need for your customers. So you asked for some specific examples. What can they do? First and foremost, everyone screws this up. And I know some listeners are going to be like, crap, I do this. Don't test apps. Stop. Every time you install an app, you're installing a line of JavaScript into your code that slows your website down. When you press uninstall, instantly, the second you press uninstall, that app loses access to your store. That code's still in your theme. So you tried, a dozen apps, you've just made your website not 12 times slower, but you know what I mean? You've added 12 lines of spaghetti code in there. Yeah. And there's a few things that's going on there. Now you're calling a bunch of JavaScript files that you actually don't need for your website. So it's slower than it needs to be. Also, you've made it harder to work on your website because there's code in there that doesn't do anything. So it's going to confuse any developer that's in there that's trying to solve any problem that you have in the future. So don't just willy-nilly install apps. If you want to test an app, the proper way to do it is clone your live theme, duplicate it in the back end, install that app that you want to try into one of those duplicates. And if you don't like it, just activate the one that doesn't have that code on it and delete the one that had that code on it. You know what I mean? You could get even more serious, like using a GitHub repository and doing that, but that's kind of like, Ecom 300 level stuff when you kind of maybe have to have some development knowledge for that stuff, but just don't install apps willy-nilly. Another thing is people, they're too close to their website because they're like, this is the experience and this is how it works. And everyone should know how it works. It's no, you know how it works because you build it and you know how it works. You look at it every day, but a general customer probably doesn't know how it works. So you got to take yourself out of it and do some kind of user testing. Don't ask your parents, don't ask your girlfriend. Like, you need to ask a stranger to use your website and get some real-time feedback. And they're going to point out stuff that you just didn't even know. Right. All the time we'll have like, leads come in from the agency and I'll just browse around on their website and I'm like, did you realize like this is so broken? And like, it's just on the first call and they're like, oh no, like we didn't know that was broken, or it's always been that way. It's like, well, why aren't you fixing it? Like, what's going on? That's killing your conversion rate or whatever it's doing. And so it's like, you get so used to things, you have blinders on. So really getting an outside opinion, someone you don't know, will be way more honest with you than someone that you do know.
Yep. I do the same thing when I'm in with a new account and I'm auditing. I'm always finding like 5 or 10 things that are just like, don't do this. And that's always the first conversation.
Yeah, that kind of like puts us into the more of the CRO kind of camp of things. So that would be the qualitative data, right? So our expertise is e-commerce experts, and we can come in and we'll see that stuff kind of quickly, like, oh, this is this. These are things that are wrong and they should be fixed. And that kind of just comes from the expertise, right? And that's like kind of part of CRO. And then there's like the qualitative data, right? So that's stuff in the analytics. Like, you can see in analytics that there's a huge issue on this page, right? But you don't know what that issue means. So then you have to like kind of look and research and figure out why there's this issue or a big drop off there, right? Yeah. And then there's also the data that you get, and this is the best type of data that no one does, and this is like getting really into the weed, is you get it from your customers, right? So within Hotjar, seeing how people are interacting with the website and where they're having frustrations, actually interviewing your customers and finding out why they bought, why they didn't buy. Like, that's where you get like the real insights and wins. Because then it's like, unfortunately for you and I, Amy, is sometimes we'll be like, hey, this is wrong, and people don't want to believe you.
Yes.
And it's you as the expert versus them as the brand owner, and it's like, it's just like it's just feelings versus feelings, right? But if you go, your customers are having this frustration and they say so, and you can like point to it within like a recording, and then it isn't you and I versus each other anymore. Now it's just like, okay, the customer needs this, and so it makes the conversation a lot easier.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my gosh, we're speaking the same language. How many times have I had conversations with people and I say things like, well, why don't you survey your customers, find out what they think, like call them, and they're like, what? So yeah, I mean, and who wants to? I mean, I know so many people who got into internet businesses because they didn't want to talk to people. So, but if you want to own a business and you want it to scale, you're going to engage with humans. So
yeah, I mean, that's any business that is, actually in the 8 figures tracking towards 9, like they are talking to their customers almost daily.
Yes, right, exactly. And so listeners out there, you heard it here first. You got to talk to your customers. So that probably leads us directly into your brand scaling framework. Can you talk about that? Because you have a very definite path for
success. And I'm in the middle of polishing up our ebook on this. It's going to be super cool, and it'll be out here in a couple months. But basically, e-commerce is math. It's very fun and easy and trackable. And I kind of highlighted 2 of the KPIs that we really like the agency. But so there's 3 KPIs. This is kind of like, we're talking, kind of e-commerce one-on-one. A lot of founders that we work with are small teams around like $1 million, $2 million a year. And it's like less than 7 people over there. The founder's wearing 10 hats, right? We come in and really help them out. And we're like, hey, we're going to make it simple for you. These are the 3 KPIs that you should care about. And I'll argue that every other KPI that exists, you can point back to these 3. So average order value, conversion rate, and sessions, right? Those are the 3 that I care about because they're really easy to find in the back end of a Shopify store. They're just right there on your analytics screen, right?
Yep.
So at the agency, we usually look at the last 30 days. So you go in there, you get those 3 numbers for the last 30 days, right? And why those 3 numbers matter is because they're magical. If you multiply them all together, you're going to basically get your sales for the last 30 days because it's just the law of averages, right? You had 10,000 sessions and 2% converted at $75. That's a number. I forget what it is. I'm not a human calculator and I don't have it in front of me, but
I don't do math in public either.
Yeah. You get a baseline, right? You're going to get an average baseline. So now you've got your starting point. And here's a sidebar here. Who cares what your competitor's conversion rate is or what they're getting on their average order value or their sessions? Because it's not you. They have a whole different story and business and appetite for risk and maybe investors. Like, it's not worth going down that like rabbit hole. Whatever your number is, that's your number, and focus on that number. Anything else put blinders on. So, right, you've got a conversion rate. It's whatever. Now you need to, figure out how to increase it. Find out where these issues are. That could be by hiring experts like Amy and myself, or it could be like by doing it yourself and learning these things, jumping into analytics, jumping into Lighthouse, seeing where things are slowing down, doing some customer interviews, doing some heat mapping with like a tool like Hotjar, finding out where these issues are with your website. So then you can try to solve them in an attempt to increase your average order value. And then now the next one, that was conversion rate. And for average order value, that kind of comes down to your offers, really. There's things that you can do that will increase your average order value, higher or lower. If, you could make everything 50% off, your conversion rate is going to shoot for the roof, but your average order value is going to drop in half.
That's right.
There's things like that, or you can just double all your prices and that's probably going to drop your conversion rate, but your average order value is going to go up. But most of the time people aren't going to be manipulating their prices. It's more going to be like the offer that they present people. And that kind of comes down to bundles, cross sells, upsells, and all that stuff. So putting those offers in front of the customers within the experience of your website in a way that feels natural and not jarring. And that's something that I see a lot of the off the shelf apps do terribly, is it really takes you out of the experience. And people like to buy, but they don't like to be sold. And when you like feel like you just got hit with an upsell or something like that, and you see it, it kind of turns customers off. So you really want to make sure that the experience is like in line. It feels like you're doing them a favor instead of like trying to sell them something. And it's a really fine line that you have to dance in. And that's where I think working with a team that kind of knows what they're doing might help you out there to really build out some of those upsell and cross-sell experiences that are a little more fluid and built into the experience.
Yes.
And then sessions is the one that everyone goes to first, but is, you know, we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier. If you're sending a lot of traffic to a website that's not as optimized, it's going to convert it basically the same historical rate, right? That's what you're going to see. So if you've got, you know, a low conversion rate and low AOV, and you're just dumping all of your budget and time and energy into getting more traffic, it's going to convert roughly around that. Actually, it's going to convert a little bit lower because all that traffic is an experience with your website. But you spend the time up front to build the best experience you can with, you know, these upsells and cross sells built in that make sense, that are tailored kind of to what your customers need. Then you spend that rest of that money on traffic, you know, paid acquisition. You're going to see a much higher return on ad spend.
Yes, absolutely. Every time. Today's episode is sponsored by Schema app for Shopify. Connect with customers at the beginning of their buying journey. Adding structured data to your Shopify store helps search engines better understand your website. This increases the chance of customers finding and purchasing products and services like yours. Get started today at schemaapp.com, schemaapp.com. I love those 3 KPIs working together. It's gold. What you just said is gold. Everybody listening?
It's simple and it's easy. And so what we do a lot is we kind of focus on one KPI, like for like a month or two.
Yes.
Usually, you know, that's a lie. What I just said was a lie. We usually, when we first get into an account, like, because we're usually tackling the experience of a website. So either we're building a new theme or something like that, or we're like optimizing an existing store.
Yeah.
And when we're in there, like doing that, oftentimes if we're like going to be doing conversion stuff, like manipulating the UX of a website, at the same time, we can add in new features for AOV. So we're kind of doing that in one fell swoop. So there's like the obvious stuff, and then there's the less obvious stuff. So now we're getting into the data and learning from, you know, user return recordings or customer interviews to make hypotheses, either test or put on the store to try in an attempt to increase those numbers even further. Here's another sidebar is you can't do proper A/B testing, and depends on your average order value, but until you're like at like $2 to $5 million a year.
Yes.
Like $1 million brands can't do proper A/B testing because to get the statistical significance, that's a hard phrase, statistical significance of a winning A/B test, you need the website to perform the action that you want enough times to like prove the winner. And just the traffic that $1 million a year brand, which sounds like a big, you know, that's probably a lofty goal. And that's probably a goal for a lot of listeners, is I want to be $1 million brand. The traffic that you get to like, so if you're doing a conversion rate optimization test, you have to get like a crazy amount of conversions to prove which one is right within a certain amount of time. And it usually just doesn't make sense to have a test running for, 6 weeks to get that number because the traffic isn't there. You really have to have a lot of traffic and a lot of conversions to do like real test at that level. And that's something that a lot of people don't understand. So I have to educate them a lot when they come in, younger brands, and be like, hey, like we can do a lot of, optimization activities, but your traffic really doesn't afford you to do a real proper test. And just setting expectations. That's like the name of the game, when you're in this space as a consultant, is educating and setting expectations.
That's right. Absolutely. But the statistical significance is huge because once you have enough numbers, once you have enough traffic, sales, that's what it all boils down to. Then you've got some wiggle room where you can do the testing. So what do you think of meek tweaks versus like major overhauls? Because there's a time and a place for both.
All right. There's a middle ground, right?
Oh,
like
cool.
A major overhaul in my mind would be like a brand new theme, right? Is that what you're considering a major overhaul?
That would be a major overhaul.
Okay,
yes.
So I've heard this from a friend of mine, Armand, at the Van Group. He says that what he's learned from a lot of higher ups at some legacy brands is about every 4 or 5 years, it's worth doing a major overhaul, investing in the new technologies and following the patterns of the new patterns of the web. it is beneficial to the brand. Now you're not a legacy brand, you probably can't afford that, but that makes sense. Like every 4 or 5 years to get a new website is kind of the argument that he's hearing from some of these larger brands. On the other side, you can make iterative improvements on an existing website and really capture those gains. Kind of, if it's a fast website, it's performant, and you are not adding a bunch of weird apps in there and making a spaghetti code. You can keep iteratively improving it and kind of keep upping those rates, like conversion rate and average order value over time. And that's the way to do it. But to meek tests, like changing the color of a button isn't worth it on an e-commerce store. Changing a headline actually might be worth it. But like small things aren't really worth it. What you'd want to do is like understand, don't test things just for the sake of testing them. Test them because there's a hypothesis behind it. So if, now this comes down to the psychology behind conversion rate optimization, which is, what is your customers' fears, uncertainties, and doubts with the conversion? And shout out to Josh Frank for being our CRO coach at the agency. And this is a lot of stuff that comes from him. So, why aren't they buying? What don't they believe about it? And, what are the questions and the hesitations that they have? And you can literally ask your customers these questions and learn this from them. And you're going to see patterns within their responses from, you can do email surveys or pop-ups on your websites or call them and do actual customer interviews. And you can learn all this stuff. You'll see patterns. Even in your reviews, you'll see patterns oftentimes. Like, I didn't know this until I bought, what I mean? Like, you'll see these patterns with stuff and you'll understand. And a lot of this is just educating, right? So if you know that your customers are super concerned about your warranty and that your products are made in America, put that right there on your cart page, right? That's like a big change to make, and test that, right?
Yep.
You know what I mean? Just testing a layout, probably not that important, but like if you see a couple things that you can do in one test, it's worthwhile to do that versus just a small thing. Because usually the one small thing won't matter, but doing a couple things with hypotheses behind them probably will matter.
Yes, because you're going to be able to see the effects, right?
Yeah.
Of, you made a few changes and you'll be able to see the effects. And shout out to Hotjar, which you mentioned earlier. And I talked about this a few weeks ago on a different episode. I forget which one, but customer had, or the client rather, the store owner had a thing on a web page and people were clicking on it. We installed Hotjar and it was drawing clicks, but there was no link.
Dude, people click on everything.
Yes,
they think
do.
everything's a link. It's so funny.
But we installed a link, and then that changes everything. So these are really awesome tips that you're giving. And
I mean, I just think Hotjar is an amazing tool because the way that people are going to interact with your website is just so insane. You're like, why is someone using it this way? I've never considered this to be an option, and you'll see a bunch of people using it that way. So it really helps you get out of that, like, being so familiar with it, and you're like, oh, like, okay. And then you can kind of find a lot of these insights. And like you said, clicking on random stuff that isn't clickable. That's like definitely something that you're going to notice a lot in Hotjar. Like, you'll see people rage click on stuff where they like get frustrated or trying to close windows that shouldn't be in, like where a lot of weird stuff's happening. Hotjar is super cool for those insights. Another cool thing that we learned to do is to run a report on basically cross-referencing high traffic pages versus revenue generated.
Yes.
And you'll find opportunities to put kind of like calls to actions for sales stuff on like high traffic pages that aren't really converting.
Yes.
That's a great way to kind of like get some easy wins kind of in your store.
Yep, absolutely. One of the stores that I'm in uses within Shopify the pages feature and the blog feature, a lot. And I've got one client, her top, 3 or 5 pages are blog pages.
Yeah.
For traffic. So we just said, hey, why don't you put some product links on those pages? Boom.
Yeah. I mean, so I think one of the most underserved features of the Shopify ecosystem is the blog.
Yep.
So we have a custom framework that we built for a lot of our clients, and the blog functionality is like almost akin to that of a WordPress blog, because I come from WordPress background like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So a lot of those features we were like, all right, we figured out how to do that stuff. So now like we've got the index pages are beautiful with sidebars and cross-linking and like all this extra stuff that just isn't in the Shopify experience usually out of the box in any theme. And now we've actually doubled down on this. Just yesterday, we were talking about adding product specific calls to actions and product links into blog articles, because one of our clients, also huge blog, kind of in the workout space, and they're often talking about their own products within these blogs, but down at the bottom is kind of where these related products live.
Yes.
But looking at the analytics, the majority of the traffic actually doesn't make it to the bottom.
Yes.
So we are custom building out a short code feature, which is reminiscent of kind of the WordPress days. Now with Online Store 2.0 and meta fields, we can build out a short code functionality that you can tie specific products and just place it wherever you want within the blog article in an attempt to convert high traffic pages that have low order values to increase that.
That's the way to go. People are looking for content. They're if it's a like a organic search result page, or even something you're throwing traffic at. If you follow John Loomer, he's talking about sending people to blog pages all the time, and it's all about the information. But the sale, anybody can make a sale on the back end if you build it properly.
Yeah, and then so here's another piece of advice is, if you're getting a lot of traffic to your blog, it's usually, I'm guessing your blog is educating someone about something.
Mm-hmm.
So before going for the sale, maybe just try to get the email. So a easy thing to do is, look at your top couple of traffic pages and curate that email pop-up offer to be specific to the content on that page, right? So using my fitness example, here's like the top 10 body weight exercises of 2022, and it's a nice long form blog article, and it's getting a lot of traffic. Now the email pop-up that comes up that I'm trying to get their email isn't just sign up for tips. You know what I mean? What it says is, get the PDF of this emailed to you directly. You need to match the message of the pop-up to the message of the content that they're already interacting with. So they're like, actually, I do want this PDF of this workout, or something that's related to it, and it's a direct correlation. That's going to get you a way higher opt-in than just a generic opt-in on that page.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, custom and content for Ecom. Go you for bringing that up, because the days of the t-shirt store from 10 years ago. Here's a t-shirt, and then somebody hits buy. Gone. We don't do that anymore. You really have to have content. You have to have product descriptions. You have to have collections or categories if you're on WordPress, along with the blogs and whatever, newsletter.
Exactly.
Something to keep people involved.
I think that is something that is, it might be one of the harder things of e-commerce, is people are passionate about their product, and then when they start to get to the point of scaling where they need content on a extremely regular basis, they haven't built those systems yet. So I would, taking the time now to tell listeners, like, start to build those systems out before you need them. You know what I mean? You need content for everything. You need it for your ads. You need it for your newsletter. You need it for your socials. And you need to find ways to get that content created. Doing one photo shoot every 3 months isn't going to cut it. You're never going to be profitable, because that content is going to get stale really fast, and you're obviously not testing your content enough. Your creative isn't being tested at all if you're in like the paid world and paid social. So there's kind of 3 ways that you can kind of start building out these systems. The first system is build it out internally, right? Start to create content internally. Is that like we create a podcast at the agency, right? Not necessarily an e-commerce brand, but like, you could create a podcast, you could create a video series. You could, maybe if you're in high fashion, maybe you have an editorial calendar and you like stick to it very specifically, and you guys curate the imagery that you want that's featuring your products on a specific cadence, right? Then you can also, build a relationship with someone else, like either an agency or a consultant or a partner or a freelancer, and have them be consistently creating content for you as well. And then the third thing that a lot of people don't do is ask your customers for content. You know what I mean? UGC is a real thing, and there's a lot of cool stuff just floating around there. And if you just start asking for it, they're going to send it to you. And kind of getting all 3 of those systems firing on full cylinders, you're really going to get the content that you need and start to experiment when it comes to your kind of testing and your social ads.
Yep. Absolutely. So you brought up UGC, user generated content, which is really important to e-com brands. It used to be influencers, but now UGC kind of dials that down. You don't have to be a Kardashian to, get the word out there. So I think probably most of the people that you're working with, and certainly me too, is UGC is the way to go. How do you encourage people to get users to send content or get permission to use the content that they're sending? How do you do that?
Absolutely. I mean, there are some really easy ways where you can just email your customer list and ask them for it, and you'll be surprised at who sends it back. People will people. It's kind of built into the nature of social media these days. If you like a product, you almost endorse them on your own profiles and stuff like that. And if you get tagged with something on your social media, just instantly respond and be like, "We love that. Can we use that?" And 9 times out of 10, someone's going to be like, "Sure, yeah, I don't care." You get that permission, and there are applications out there on the internet that will download that media for you, that will store it for you. And I'm not familiar with them as much because we don't do much of that at the agency. But that content's free out there to use. Just ask people for it. And also oftentimes a lot of the more modern review apps ask for photos as well, or videos and then also get that permission for you. So you could possibly look into using a more modern kind of review application within your store to help curate some of that user-generated content as well.
Yep. I'm right there with you. This is great. So what do you think is the hardest part of e-commerce right now?
I mean, I definitely kind of mentioned the building those content systems. That's definitely a super hard part. But if I was going to have a second difficulty, I think it is just finding product market fit, going from 0 to 1. That's the hardest thing to do. And this is where it's going to get a little funny. Is I see a lot of founders go about this the wrong way, and they want to hire an agency right off the bat, or a consultant, or someone, et cetera, to help them find product market fit. And that's a terrible idea. It's just not going to work, and you're going to go out of business. You're going to be frustrated by entrepreneurship. You're going to still be frustrated with the next thing that I say, but it's the right way to do it. Finding product market fit is the founder's struggle, and you have to do that yourself. I do not think that there is an agency or consultant in the world that can help you find product market fit in a way that is actually profitable for you. You have to do that hard work yourself. And if you're not willing to do that hard work, maybe this isn't the industry for you to be in. You need to go out there and find out where those customers are. You need to go out there and find out what your marketing message is. You need to go and figure out what your product is that's going to solve an actual need for a customer. If you're getting into e-commerce just because you want to make money, you're probably not going to be successful. No. But if you're getting into it because you're passionate about your product or solving a problem for your customers, you're probably going to be just fine.
I think that was a mic drop statement right there.
You can tell that I get passionate about this at times. I mean, that's where the name for the podcast comes from, is I'm just being honest about this stuff. And like, it was all the YouTube videos. I got a Ferrari because this dropship store selling t-shirts. Like, that doesn't exist. That doesn't work. That's not real. You're going to get scammed out of $5,000 buying a course that tells you how to sell courses. Don't do that. That's not real. This is hard work. Like, money doesn't grow on trees. You have to work hard to make money. There is no way around it.
And the myth of passive income is,
there is no such thing as passive income.
That's right.
There's no such thing as passive income. That's a dumb statement in the world. People are like, what about rental properties? Still not passive. You still have to manage stuff. What about a drop shipping store? Still not passive. You have to build all that stuff. There's a lot of investment that goes into these things. Just educate yourself, all of that. You know what I mean? Learn about wealth building, personal finances. Go read a bunch of books. Library's free. Go learn. Like, that's what you should be doing.
Yep. Perfect. This is great. I think we'll have a wrap there. So shout out to your podcast, Honest Ecommerce. People should go, it's a really easy search. It's on YouTube. It's on Apple Podcasts, so go
everywhere that podcast should be. It's there.
Exactly.
On my show, most of the interviews are I'm interviewing brands and I'm asking them how they did it. But then there's bonus episodes that I have where I interview awesome people like Amy, and we learn cool stuff as well.
And that's fun. And we're going to be doing that not too distant future. And then your Shopify agency is electriceye.io. You want to talk about that for a sec?
Sure. Yeah. We do two things. We build beautiful performant Shopify themes and optimize existing stores. So if you're looking to make your store better, increase your average order value and your conversion rate, we're probably a good team to talk to.
Perfect. Good. We're going to have a lot more about Chase in the show notes and links to the podcast and the agency. And Chase, thank you so much for coming on today. This is a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me and letting like my coffee fueled rant just go.
Just the right amount of caffeine. That's perfect.
Awesome. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Traffic Handler podcast. We're about getting new customers, making more sales, and growing your e-commerce retail business. I'm your host, Amy Biddle. Get more at amybiddle.me. And until next time, go sell more stuff.